I'm Shruti Kohli, editor of NDTV's Just Books. We are right in the middle of Pride Month. And when I was sifting through my bookshelf, one book that stood out was Rain Must Fall. Well, the protagonist is a teenager. They are non-binary. It's an Indian family in an Indian setup, and it's a graphic novel. Why wouldn't it stick out? So I have with me Nandita Basu, the author of the book. Hi, Nandita. Welcome to Just Books.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you over. Nandita, I'll just dive right in. And there are lots of questions and thoughts that occurred when I picked up your book and I read it. One is that the intersectionality that we see, there's a lot of intersectionality happening through the story. And then there is the format of the book itself. There is a coming together of an illustrative and textual narrative.
If you tend to notice, graphic novels often, I don't know why, I can't give you a proper kind of a reasoning on that, but graphic novels, tend to be the space people who want to talk about marginalized stuff use that medium a lot. So you will notice that a lot. So maybe that was like an automatic thing for my story as well, apart from the fact that I can't write anything else but graphic novels. So that wasn't the major choice for me, like to use graphic novel as a way to kind of convey the story. Also, I think it's an extremely powerful medium, not just because I don't think graphic novels are meant only for children. In fact, graphic novels are read by everybody, and it's an extremely powerful medium because I'm actually a musician. My background is like a musician. So being a musician, you're constantly working with melody and rhythm, and so for me, graphic novels is like that intersection of trying to play with melody and rhythm, but this time just using words and illustrations.
Of course, and it sits so well with the entire concept of the story. So, coming to talking of intersectionalities, there was another, aspect that sticks out for me when I read it is the ontological fluidity of identities. So there is the interplay between the ghostly and the corporeal. There is a ghost, which in itself, the entity, defies all categorization, between life and death. So, and so it mirrors and it explains a lot about binary gender identities.
Actually, it was a very deliberate choice, and I'm going to use a word which probably is going to sound very intense, but when I started making the graphic novels, one aspect of it, if somebody has picked it up, they may have, and actually, you're the first person who's asked me this question. So thank you for asking me that. There was this, an angle of spirituality I wanted to put out there gently, and that stems from our very own Indian culture, and if you want to I don't want to get into spaces of religion, but just let's work with the idea of Indian culture. And here we have the concept of a soul is universal, and the soul doesn't have a gender. It is not bound by anything. It's only love, and that's what binds us all together. Nobody is separate from the other, and we don't subscribe to boxes, and that's the real us. And that's actually a very important part of when I say spirituality, I mean Vedanta. And I wanted that to come across. Obviously, for children or anybody, I'm not going to be putting it out there as a spiritual concept. But the truth is, I do believe myself that at the end of the day, we are far more and beyond the body. So the body doesn't make us who we are. And that's why I had the other character, Rain, as the person. Or I don't think he's just an entity. He's pretty much a very living, energy and an experience and a consciousness out there, to kind of say, look, when you're not bound by the body, who are you then? Your identities are all
Yes.
placed by society. And it's all right, society puts in an identity, there's nothing wrong in that. But if you're going to be bound only by that, and only people are going to perceive you through that, then the problem begins, or people start judging you only through that, whether it's you yourself or the other person, then there is a problem. So we have to keep moving back a step within ourselves to understand we are actually universal. We are consciousness, we are the soul, and we are not bound by any gender.
Oh yes, that's a strong point that you made there, and that brings me to again, the interplay that we are talking about. There is an intertwining with the ancient. There's an ancestral home which the protagonist is visiting, and there are many untold stories, and there is a family history, and there are closed rooms which have not been opened in years. So there is this temporal layering that is there. It also tells us a lot about, it opens up another identification, I think, for when you talk about gender identities and for binary identities and non-binary identities.
So, all our homes as well, especially if our house has stood long enough, they also have an identity. They start carrying many stories, sometimes not so pleasant, sometimes maybe, pleasant, and sometimes hidden. And like all human beings carry, I think, if you notice, we carry a lot of the sadness within us, more than happiness sometimes. Houses
Yeah.
also kind of, layer in and carry those stories where somebody might have left in a bit of sadness. And so therefore the house comes in holding rain, because that's the only safe space he kind of knows, even though it wasn't a safe space. If you go back to the story, I mean, he had to leave the house and, move, leave the house, but it still was some sort of a, safe place for him. And the house is also holding his identity. The house never judged him, but held on to it in some sort of a memory, whether it was through like the next of kin or somebody, almost like waiting for someone to come and discover the story. And it was an important part of the layering. And that's partly, I myself have grown up, I've had like spent many a summers in a house which is roughly more than 100 years old. So I have discovered many stories in my own personal space, and it was a very natural thing for me to come up with the house holding someone's little secret or joy or pleasure or maybe sadness over here.
Yeah, of course. Fiction is always something that is, as I say, truer than truths. So, yes, so whenever an author is writing fiction, most of it comes from whatever they have experienced or seen in real life. So I could feel it somehow. When the house was revealing itself, I could feel that personal instinct that it had to it. I could feel that you have been there somehow. So yeah, there was that touch was there. So coming to the naming, I was naming of the protagonist. I was Rumi, of course. For once, you could think that, oh yeah, it's just another name. But then, right in the middle of the book, uh, the quote is there, the most famous quote: "What you seek is seeking you." And then there's a name of the ghost. Why rain? Why rain?
So to begin with, Rumi, I'm a great fan of his work. One of the greatest saints, I think. And if you read his work, as you read his poetry, he tends to go beyond the body. He no longer has a body identification. So if you pick up, as authors, we're looking for new names for our characters, and all names start having an identity of man, woman, even for dogs. A dog should be named like this, a donkey should have this name.
Very important. Yes.
Yeah, so we've all created all these identities, and I wanted a name which had managed to break free from these identities. And for me, Rumi is that saint. Like, I mean, of course there are many saints, and Rumi was like, and it's also shorter, so in many ways it's like kind of easy for me to proofread and all when I'm kind of fitting it in a box. But yes, I mean, the fact that I am huge fan, I mean, a fan would be a wrong word, but I'm very inspired by his poetry and his own spiritual experiences. So for me, Rumi was the name. Like, it didn't, it could be anybody. It could be a boy, it could be a girl, it could be anybody who was seeking to be more than the body. So that's why Rumi. And rain, I mean, I like the sound of rain. I was also inspired by music. I think it's Yanni has this music called Rain Must Fall. You
Oh,
know,
oh.
yes, there is a piano piece. I think it's called
Uh-huh.
Rain Must Fall. And it's true. I mean, can you stop the rain? It's just there. I mean, uh, who does rain belong to? Does it belong to a country? Does it belong to anybody? Does it belong to any space? You cannot box it, you know. So, and there you have rain. And I think somewhere we're all carrying rain within all of us, and that
Wow.
was the identity. The one thing I do want to make, I want to tell everybody is, I've said this before many times. I never wanted to make a statement with my book because, I think as a society, we should evolve to a space where we don't need to have to make a statement. And for me, most important, the whole entire concept was not to talk about a non-binary character or anything. It was to put a story out there to kind of say we're all just human beings. There's this, Rumi, the character, is just a kid. It's just a kid like anybody else. This kid is just trying to be a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old or whatever. So trying, I mean, it's like any other child. And so if I could have a girl or a boy for one of the main characters, I didn't see no reason for me not to have a non-binary character out there. And it's time. I mean, hopefully we get to that part soon where I don't have to talk about my character being non-binary. I mean,
Of
it
course,
shouldn't
yes.
it shouldn't have to be spelled out. It is what it is. That's it.
It is what it is. Yes, yes. But yeah, as of now, what we see is uh, it's still very difficult, although the conversation has started and in a very big way, in an open way. I have come across families that are talking to their children about it, and we are opening up as a society, but we do have a long way to go. And I would say it again that I'm really glad that we could have this conversation and add to the larger conversation that has been going on for a while. So thank you, and I wish that, and I hope to see many more books from you,
Well,
which
thank
are,
you.
yeah, which can start different conversations each time.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I hope
Thank
you do
you.
read the other books as well.
Of course, yes. Looking forward. Thank you, Nandita. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me here.